Hello everyone, Shino here. Today we are going to be learning how to install Nextcloud AIO on TrueNAS. Editor Shino here. This idiot in recording completely forgot to mention what Nextcloud is. Nextcloud is a self-hosted Google Drive-esque suite of tools that offers in-browser file management, file editing, collaborative editing, calendars, contacts, and even a full-on Zoom/Skype video conferencing tool. It is a useful suite that brings a lot of power to self-hosting solutions. And best of all, it's free! And now, back to our less than regularly scheduled program. For this installation, we are intending this instance of Nextcloud to be accessible to the public and not using a VPN service like Tailscale to access it. There are many situations where this might be necessary, such as you are giving it to other coworkers or clients that might not be able to reasonably install software such as Tailscale or other VPN services that more private internal uses of Nextcloud might be wanting to implement. So if you're servicing your Nextcloud with the intent of being highly private and not risking any internal data getting out, this might not be for you. But if your goal is to have your Nextcloud instance be externally accessible, be open to other users, then this is the place you want to come to learn how to do that. For this, we are going to be using Cloudflare to act as a proxy for forwarding traffic through the URL, and we will be using Nginix Proxy Manager as well as the reverse proxy. But with that, let's get into it. Bop. Here we have TrueNAS dashboard. This is on a backup machine I made to do tests, and you will see here I have some future projects that I'm working on, but we will get to those in another video. You're first going to need a couple of things. You want to go to Discover Apps and get an application called Nginix, if I can spell, Proxy Manager. Right here. This is important because as we have subdomains to access different parts of our NAS or server, they're going to have internal ports, and we don't want to have a bunch of ports open on our router. Rather, we only want one port open, and Nginix Proxy Manager will handle all the traffic for that. Scrolling down, we can see a bunch of options. Here you'll see our storage configuration. IX volume is not what we want. We are going to want to have this as a host path for both of them. One is data storage and the other is for search storage. So let's open up our data sets in another tab. Here you're going to want a separate folder for your applications. So let's add a new data set and call this one Nginx. Save. Yep, I just like to make it all apps no matter what, just so there's no weird permissions issues. Now one is for data. Set that as apps permission. And the other one is certs. Again, set as apps. With those datasets made, we can come back to our installation page and associate everything to where they go. Again, data goes to data, and certs goes to certs. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Now up here we have some important points that we need to be aware of. We have our web UI, HTTP, and HTTPS ports. Web UI is that way we can modify all of our settings and set up our reverse proxies. HTTP and HTTPS ports, these are what the incoming traffic is going to be forwarded through. But for this, you're going to likely want them to be 80 for HTTP and 443 for HTTPS, as those are the standard ones. That said, if you have explored TrueNAS GUI a little bit, you'll know that these ports are already taken by the TrueNAS GUI. So let's go to our systems. In settings or system general settings, you'll see this area called GUI. If you click on the settings, you can change the HTTP port and HTTPS ports. I just made them 8008 and 44344 just for this example. This means that you will get logged out of your GUI, and in the address bar, you're just going to need to make a semicolon and replace that with one of these two ports. Then you're going to be back in. So save that, and going back to here, we can scroll down and click install. Alright, we have Nginx Proxy Manager installed. Now this is going to be something that will probably take a while on any system you have. My system that I'm doing this on is a bit lower end, but even on my more powerful NAS, it can take anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes for this to fully deploy. I think when I tested it out on my system here, it took about 24 minutes to deploy. A big part of that is the certs part, or certs starting, whatever it's called. So if you come here to our logs, you will see it will get stuck on certbot for forever. From my understanding, this is entirely normal. I don't know why, but it even says here, this may take some time. And trust me, some time is an understatement. So while that works, let's hop over to our apps again. The next app we want is a Docker manager. I like using Portainer. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. There's other ones like Dockage, and some other ones we can see here as well. But Portainer is my personal favorite to use. Coming to the install, everything we can basically leave as is. There's not any real need to touch any of this other than our storage configuration. For this, once again, we're going to want to come to our datasets, go to apps, or whatever you decide to call your app storage dataset, add dataset, and let's call it Portainer. Again, I just like to make anything that is app related as app permission, so there's no risk of issues. And we are going to call this data. And coming back to our install page, change it from IX to host path, do our little drop downs into Portainer, and click on data. With that, we should have everything set to go. Just making sure I didn't forget anything. None of this needs to be touched, and we can click on save or install. However, this part is kind of important if you have a more powerful system. You might want to give this full usage of your system's processes. So you might, if you have more CPU cores, give it more CPU cores. If you have more memory, give it more memory. This just lets you ensure that anything you install on it actually does have access to all of the resources it can. So let's make this 8102. Did I math right? Hold on. My math ain't mathin'. My math ain't mathin'. Calculator. Why do I suck at math? 4096 divided by 4 times. I actually want it to be 10 gigabytes, so let's make it 10240. 10240. Install. I'm not sure if the Docker containers are actually limited by the resources you give Portainer. They might be, they might not be. That's not something I've really tested. I just decided to lean on the side of caution when it came to that. If you're not sure how much you should give your instances, remember always check your memory and your CPUs to see what you typically have free. Just because you give it 10 gigabytes of memory or 12 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes doesn't mean it's going to use all of it. That just means that it has access to that much. But with that, let's hop over to Portainer and click on HTTPS. And here is where we run into our next part. Let's make an account for our Portainer. So you can name this whatever you want. I already had some things set previously, so I'm just going to use what I had before and create our environment. You'll need to give it a minute to set up everything, and then you can hop straight into our home, click on local and stacks. Here you will see a list of the different containers already running on your TrueNAS system. As you can see, control is limited because these were not made by Portainer, so Portainer does not have control over them. That is controlled by the TrueNAS apps page. But what we want to do is over here, add stack. We're going to copy and paste this following script, if I can find it. Nextcloud. I will have this available in the description, but basically what this is just telling Nextcloud to pull the latest, or if you want, you can have it pull beta, whichever version you want. You're going to want to leave the ports as they are. Do not touch these. We're going to worry about that later. For memory limit, you can increase this or decrease this as you want. I'm just going to set this to 10 to 40 for my use cases right now, and everything else just leave as is. At the top, you're going to want to name it. Let's call it Nextcloud, and then scroll down and click deploy. Alright, now that we're done deploying our Nextcloud stack, we want to have all traffic being forwarded to our NAS. For this, you will need a domain name, which you will buy from whichever provider you choose, and you will need Cloudflare. Once you have your domain name, you are going to want to forward all DNS traffic to Cloudflare. For that, you will go to Cloudflare, DNS, and at the very bottom here, you will see Cloudflare name servers. Depending on where you have your domain name procured through, there will be different instructions, but just look up your provider and how to change the name server. Enter the values you see here, and everything should be going through Cloudflare's name servers pretty easily. The next part in the DNS records is the management. You are going to want to add a record. Here you will have multiple types. We want type A. In name, this creates a subdomain. So, for example, scholar.google.com. Google.com is the domain name, but Scholar is the subdomain. This is kind of like just narrowing things down to more specific things. So for this, we can call it Nextcloud. And then in the IPv4 address, you're going to put your actual IP address in. Next, you want to make sure proxy status is checked. This will obfuscate your public IP address and make everything only see Cloudflare's IP addresses. So it is a level of protection through obfuscation, and hopefully when you're handing out your URLs, not everyone is going to just find out the IP address of your home lab server. After that, you're going to want to click Save. It should mostly be instant, but it can take a couple minutes for some people to populate everything as necessary. But after those couple of minutes, we can hop over back to TrueNAS. As we can see, for me right now, Nginx Proxy Manager is still deploying. I will skip forward in a few minutes to the next section, but while you're still waiting for this, what you can do is port forward on your router. You want to have ports 80 and 443 forwarded to your machine. This way, Nginx Proxy Manager can receive all the necessary traffic. Once that is done, everything should be pretty straightforward from there. So we're going to wait a couple minutes for Nginx Proxy Manager to finish its ordeal, and we'll go on from there. And one episode of Sentenced to be a Hero later, we are ready to go. So let's go to our apps, click on Nginx Proxy Manager, and hit the Web UI button. Here we are forwarded to the welcome screen where we can create our admin account. So put in your name, Shino Song in my case, enter an email address of your choosing, and put in a password. Once you are in, you will be greeted with this web UI. Let's hop over to Proxy Host. Click on Add Proxy Host. Here you will need to remember the subdomain you chose here. In our case, it is Nextcloud. So add in the full URL in the domain's name. So nextcloud dot your URL, and click on Create. Here you can leave this as HTTP or HTTPS depending on your needs. And here you'll do the forwarding. So this will be your local IP address for this. So you can literally just do whatever your local IP is for the router. Dun, 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 dun. And here it will be the port that is forwarding to. If you left everything as is for Nextcloud, it should be 11,000. With that, we can now click on SSL, request new certificate. Remember, for this, make sure that both ports 443 and 80 are forwarded to your machine. Otherwise, this will fail. You do force SSL and everything else that you want here, just to make sure it's secure. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm not going to click this, but you will want to have WebSocket support clicked, block common exploits clicked, and click Save. Now, in theory, everything should be working just fine. So let's hop back over to Portainer. Clicking on our Nextcloud stack, we can see that the master container is healthy. Next, we will want to go to our address bar, and in our URL for our port, we are going to want to replace it with 8080. So whatever your local IP address is, semicolon 8080, as we can see here, but we're not going to click on that because that will just bring us to 000008080, which works if it is the local host, but not if we are connecting to it from another computer on the network. So replace the port with 8080 in your address bar, and let's hop over. Click on Advance, Proceed. Here we have our passphrase. This we are going to want to copy. Save it somewhere safe. If you lose this, you will be basically out of luck if things go wrong in the future and need to start over again from this point. So once you have it saved, click on Open Nextcloud AIO, paste that in, and log in. In a moment, you will be brought to the page where we can actually finish our setup. Here, you are going to want to first enter your domain name. So that will be what we chose on Cloudflare. In our case, it was nextcloud.our URL, as I have here. Submit domain name, and we can now look at our options for containers. Here we have ClamAV, which is an antivirus backend, Collabora, which is kind of like our Google Docs, Google Sheets, full text search if we need to search for things, Nextcloud Talk, which is kind of like a Skype for Nextcloud, Imaginary, which gives you preview of images, and some other fun things. I would recommend getting ClamAV, full text search, and talk recording if you plan on using it. Whiteboard can be fun as well. I haven't really used it that much though. After you've selected your container options, submit your time zone. And at the bottom, you will see some optional containers. These are community made, and I personally don't really use any of these, as I, for example, have Jellyfin, Jellyseer, Plex, all handled by TrueNAS itself. I don't really need Nextcloud to handle all these extra apps. Once you have all of your containers selected and your time zone set, you can click Download and Start Containers. This part will again take a little bit, so we will come right back after it gets started. Alright, here we can see that all of our containers are downloaded and they are starting. Some of these will take a little longer than others. If you want to see the current status of everything, you will most likely be waiting for the Nextcloud container to start. As if we click on Apache and push Notify Push, it will state waiting for Nextcloud to start and waiting for Nextcloud to start. In our Nextcloud, we can see all the things that it's going through right now to make sure everything is working as it should. If you want to stay on here to watch what it does and refresh every now and then, you can. It is interesting to watch and see what is happening on the back end of things, if that is your interest. But other than that, you can probably just wait a few more minutes, click on Reload to see if anything has changed, and we will be right back again once everything is done. With that, all of our containers are now running. You can see at the top here we have our initial login information. It will basically always start off with the username being admin and the password is randomized. You will be able to change this as soon as you log in, but before we do that, let's scroll down a little bit. Here we have backup and restore. If you want to make a backup of your Nextcloud, which is advisable, you can either do this as a local backup or as a remote Borg repo. I'm not going to go into all of this as I'm still personally learning how Borg repos work and I've been playing around with that, but we will talk about that another time. If you need to change your passphrase at all here, you can put in your old one and put in a new one. And again, if you want to change anything about the containers, whether it be the actual containers or the community containers, you will need to stop containers first and then make the relevant changes. But with that, let's go to our login. So open this in a new tab, copy our password, Control-C, type in admin and our password. Log in. And here we are welcomed with all the initial stuff. You can look at all the different things that are going on with Nextcloud, get some apps for your other devices if you want, but we are going to ignore that for now. What we want to do is go to our accounts and see all the different settings. So we have accounts here that we can make and adjust. I'm going to click on edit and set a new password. You're going to want to change it to whatever is relevant for you. You can set an email address and do other things for your admin account. What I personally prefer to do is make a second account. This one is going to be the one I actually use. It will still have admin privileges, but will also be my personal account with my username and everything that's relevant, because I like to keep admin usage separate from my personal usage. It just makes things clearer and easier to keep track of, especially when you're looking at things like logs. Once you have all that set up, you should be good to go. You can go through the other different settings such that you can find here in the admin panel. You can change personal information for your personal stuff, security notifications, and if you want to do anything with Nextcloud itself, you'll do that from the administration section. So we have our overview where we can click Open AIO interface to get back to where we were before. We can look at other things like quick presets, which will help us easily set up our Nextcloud for different settings. We have support, so we can quickly find the Nextcloud community supports. Basic settings, so if you need to set up things like your email server, so that way you can have different things emailed out from Nextcloud, have background jobs, compatibility, mail providers. You have sharing settings, you have security settings. I would suggest going through all of these and seeing what applies to you and what you want to use. Definitely, I would recommend having 2FA enabled, because we live in 2026, if not later. Dare I date my video? 2FA is kind of common sense at this point. If you need encryption, server-side encryption is great. Note, this will slow down some things when it comes to loading. For example, if I go to Files, I'm going to click on a random thing in Documents. Let's go to the Welcome Hub. Here we can see it loads up pretty quickly. Not as fast as, say, Google Drive, but still not too bad. If you have encryption on, this will take an extra couple of seconds. So you can play around with that, see what you like, what you dislike with it. I personally prefer encryption because even if I do make my Nextcloud server public facing, that doesn't mean I want anything easily accessible for if it does get compromised. So encryption is always a good thing to enable when you have the opportunity. But with that, it has been a wonderful night with all of you. I hope this video was easy enough to follow. I will try to help answer any questions that you have in the comments. And I wish all of you the best of luck in your web hosting, TrueNAS, your home server journey. I will look forward to making more content of this nature and other types of videos too as I get back into streaming and media production. I hope you all have a lovely day, night, wherever you are. I'll see you all later, my causalities. Shino.